Hey, Tamie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
It's nice to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you.
Yeah. So, first of all, do you want a sip of water? Or?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. I just wanted to see if you could just tell me what's going on for you and what brings you here today.
So a little over a year ago, I started experiencing severe mood swings, anger outbursts, and I kind of was internalizing a lot of my emotions. I'm a full-time nurse, worked through the pandemic, and I just started really feeling like something was wrong internally. And then it just was getting worse and worse, anxiety attacks. And so I just recently have taken some time off from work and have been diagnosed with PTSD and burnout.
So what does that look like for you? Like in terms of
I had a headache, like a constant headache for about 6 months, and I was going through, there's a lot of stress at work being a nurse right now. And so I was just like putting it off, thinking it was allergies, testing myself for COVID. Just couldn't get rid of this headache that was constantly there. And there was a tightening in my chest, and that tightening in my chest was, it's hard to explain, but it like internalizes, but it moves. It's an actual feeling that moves out. I started throwing PVCs so I could feel my heart skip beats. Wow. I could feel my heart fluttering, like it would like take off racing, but it would flutter. My appetite, I was binge eating, and then I was doing crash diets, and then I was getting angry at myself because I wasn't able to control either direction, knowing that I shouldn't eat this, and then I'd eat it, and then I'd be upset at myself. I found myself numerous times at work, I'd go into the bathroom and cry, and then I would put a smile back on my face and go back out to work and act like absolutely everything was okay in my world, and that, I was this supportive person, but internally I was slowly dying inside, slowly just emotionally a wreck.
It sounds really painful.
It's just hard to describe how emotionally traumatizing it was, and not feeling as a nurse that I had an outlet, not feeling that I was able to talk to anybody, because nurses are supposed to be strong and we're supposed to be the caring ones and we care for others, but it's known that we don't really care for ourselves. So it's really hard, the stigmatism that was behind it. So I hid what was going on for a really long time.
How is it for you right now telling me this, talking to me about it?
My heart is speeding up. I can feel, I'm a little shaky. It's hard to express it because I feel, I feel like I'm letting people down, and I feel like maybe there's something wrong with me, and that this isn't something that is as bad as my emotional state seems to be. It's hard. It's hard talking about it to people.
Yeah, yeah. And so right now you feel like your heart's racing and you're feeling a little shaky. Mm-hmm. And can you just stay with that and see if any emotions are coming up for you right now? As you're telling me about your experience.
Scared. Yeah. A little angry. Yeah. I feel a little anger. I feel scared. I feel like really nobody understands what really is going on emotionally for me right now.
You have a way of keeping it inside and putting on a good act.
Yes. I internalize very well. Yeah. I think nurses do that.
Yeah.
We're conditioned, I should say, over the years to not let emotion show, and to be the strong one, and to be the one that's there to help everybody through times. We help patients through illnesses and family members through illnesses in our communities. So we learn to put on a good front. We learn to have that smile and that happy attitude, and you can ask me anything and I'm going to help you. It's a condition that we condition into ourselves. And we really believe that. We internally believe that that is our role. And a lot of us believe that if we step outside of that role and seek help, that there's something wrong with us, that we're not good enough, that we're not being the nurse that we should be.
And that's what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
It's been hard for you to ask for help.
It's really hard for me to ask for help because I don't want to be that nurse.
Is this the first time that you've asked for help? Or?
You mean in my career?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had some traumatic experiences being a nurse. Things that the common person probably, well, I know they don't want to hear about, but probably would have trauma over.
Do you want to say more about that?
Well, just like taking care of patients and having a patient die on you, or doing compressions. Most people in society don't understand that when you feel ribs crack under your hands, you cringe, but you keep going because you know that that's your job and you have to do those compressions or that patient's not going to survive. I was a surgical nurse for 15 years and I saw a lot of trauma come through the operating rooms, some that were successful and some that were not. And so those leave a mark on you. Those are things that you don't forget easily.
And how did you cope with those traumas?
You just internalize them and move on. You literally it's just like another day. This is something that I signed up for. This is something that I do. The good circumstances outweigh the bad. And I think that's how I emotionally got through it, is that when you had that successful surgery, when you saved that person's life, when you changed that person's life, those are always the ones that you want to remember. You don't want to remember the ones that you weren't able to be so successful with.
So in your career, you've had a lot of traumas that you've worked through and kind of stuffed down. And then when the pandemic hit, it was just another layer.
As soon as the pandemic hit, it completely changed the dynamics of what we were doing before, pre-COVID to when COVID hit. Eastern Oregon at one point became the epicenter of COVID. Our hospital was full. We didn't know what the pandemic was. We, as nurses, basically showed up for our jobs and did the best that we could. Our patients were getting sicker and sicker. It was so much stress and so much work just trying to keep these people alive. And I'm from a small community. I know the patients that walk through the door. And so it makes it harder because some of those patients. It's very
personal for you.
It is. It's so personal. And the phone calls, it didn't stop at work. The phone calls that you get at home from your neighbors and from your friends saying, hey, what do I do? What should I do? We were scared to death to go home to our families. This was killing people. It changed the dynamics in the hospital. Think of this. You're walking down the hallway and pre-COVID, and you see your friend and you give him a hug and you pat him on the back. How's it going? Fist bumps. We'll see you later. And then during COVID, you walked down the hallway and you kept 2 arms lengths away from them. Yeah. And you didn't touch them. And you didn't acknowledge them. No one smiled. It was just really hard. It was hard to pretend. Mm-hmm. I think that it was exhausting to pretend that everything was okay. In our hospital and in other hospitals, call-ins, missed shifts escalated very quickly. Mm-hmm. We were losing whole departments to COVID. Mm-hmm. They would shut down the department because the whole department would break out with COVID. Nurses were more exhausted. More nurses were getting sick, and not just with COVID. Our immune systems were breaking down. We were catching everything. Mm-hmm. Constantly, nurses were telling me at my station that they had headaches. They would come in with a runny nose, that their bodies were aching, that mentally they were foggy, slipping mentally.
And so were you working 12-hour shifts?
Yeah, I worked 3 12s. There were multiple times that you would get called to ask to come in and fill a shift.
Another 12-hour shift?
Another 12-hour shift.
So oftentimes you're working 4 12s a week?
Sometimes 5.
5 12s a week.
I know nurses that have worked 14 12-hour shifts in a row.
You're kidding. Wow.
I know nurses that were going 2 weeks, and in the 2 weeks they would maybe get 2 or 3 breaks. and kept going.
And like a 12-hour shift would mean 13 hours at work because you'd have an hour break, or what?
We started at 7:30 in the morning. We were done at 8 o'clock at night. Okay. But multiple times, I know nurses that would be there for an additional 2 hours just charting to try to catch up on what they'd done for the patient that day, and then they'd have to be back in the morning again at 7:30.
Wow.
I really think that the pandemic has changed the outlook of nursing and how nursing was, and that it'll never be the same as it was before the pandemic.
And how does that make you feel?
Like lost, sad, and angry. I mean, nursing used to be very personal. I mean, it was, you touched people, you hugged people, you cried with people. And the pandemic took that completely away from nurses. We weren't able to touch, we weren't able to hug, we weren't able to give that comfort that we're known for. And it's devastating. It's devastating when you have a patient that is dying and you have to show the family through an iPad so that they can say goodbye.
Oh my goodness.
And that's what nurses were doing throughout the state.
That's intense. It looks like it's bringing up some emotion for you.
It does. It's just...
Yeah. I can feel that.
Yeah. It's just hard. It's hard to talk about still. It's hard to get people to understand. They don't understand. Even nurses, even some nurses don't understand what we're going through, the trauma that we're internalizing and going through. Anyways, I'm gonna grab a napkin.
Okay.
Okay. See, that's what nurses do. They grab a napkin, wipe a tear, and then go back.
Mm-hmm. That's what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to stay with the grief. It's a lot of grief.
It is. It's. I think if I dwelled on it, it would destroy me. Mm-hmm. So you learn to compartmentalize it. You learn to put it off to the side in another piece of the brain and just move on from it.
And then how's that been working for you?
It worked really good until the pandemic. Yeah, it's just too much. I mean, you can set things aside when it's happening one thing at a time, but when you have multiple things thrown at you all at once, it's really hard to compartmentalize it. You know, here I feel I have to help people and I have to care for people and save people. That's who I am. That's who I identify with. And to just feel total hopelessness because I'm not doing enough. I can't fix this. I should be able to fix this, and I can't even fix myself right now. I can't fix this. And it was just this overwhelming feeling of hopelessness. It's a lot. It's a lot. I've talked to my colleagues throughout the state and throughout the country, and this isn't isolated. Right. I feel like it is. That's why sometimes I feel like such an imposter. You feel really alone, and at the same time, I do. So many people are going through. There's so many people that are going through this. Yeah. There's so many people. It would destroy us throughout the entire state, including my hospital, when I would watch a nurse walk out the door knowing they were never coming back because they were either quitting the job or they were going to traveling. Mm-hmm. And these were friends, these were colleagues, and these were people that you knew personally. Mm-hmm. And to know that was the last time you were going to work with them was pretty devastating. But it's hard to recognize that if you're not willing to admit it yourself. And at the time I wasn't willing to admit that I had a problem.
I'm wondering if you're feeling a little bit less alone right now in sharing your story.
I do. It helps. It brings back a lot of the trauma and it makes it all very real, but it also helps to release it a little. And so that I'm not the only one carrying that burden. I'm not the only one that knows what's going on. So it does help.